I golfed with a man named George for several years. When he retired from the United States Air Force, he retired to Arkansas and started Christmas Tree Farm. George had been a crewman on a B-52 Stratofortress for many years, and his title was Radar Navigator. First and foremost, it was his job to get bombs on target on time. What follows are stories that George told us from his days in the United States Air Force. When he was stationed at Andersen Air Force Base on the island of Guam, there was a marker along the runway on takeoff. They got to the marker and didn't have enough speed to make a safe takeoff. They were supposed to abort. They had the required speed at the marker, but shortly lost an engine. Guam has a runway that ends abruptly at a 600-foot cliff with only the ocean below. In a way, this is what saved them. They went off the cliff, but had enough altitude to gain airspeed and stay airborne. One year during the 1980s, George was a crew member on a Bright Star exercise, a somewhat annual event. A number of B-52s flew from Wurtsmith Air Force Base near Oscoda, Michigan, across the Atlantic to Egypt, and then returned to Wurtsmith Air Force Base in Michigan. It was a 31-hour round-trip mission with 3 refuelings with tankers. When they arrived back at Wurtsmith Air Force Base, it was socked in with fog, and they were told to go into a holding pattern. They maintained the holding pattern with an autopilot for at least an hour, and at some point from the long duration of the mission, the entire crew fell asleep. George was the first to wake and determined they had wandered over the city of Chicago, about 280 miles from Wurtsmith. But at the same time, Wurtsmith Air Force Base control tower said they could land. The crew radioed that they were making a minor course correction. It would land shortly. During the refueling, they had radio contact but no sighting of the tanker. The tanker said they could see them to gain some altitude and they would direct them. They began to gain altitude and shortly made a sighting. Drawing closer, they identified the sighting as an American Airlines passenger jet. They slowly eased away and eventually hooked up with the tanker. George always wondered what the airline pilot must have thought seeing a B-52 in his rear view mirror. At Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, George's plane was to do low-altitude training. Minimum altitude was 500 feet. George's position in the plane had no window, so he couldn't see out, but at one point, his altimeter read 25 feet. One of the crewmen that could see out said they passed over a farmstead where the farmer was driving his tractor. When the guy turned around and saw the plane bearing down on him, he bailed off the tractor. Apparently, the farmer called the Air Force Base because the pilot got a stern talking to when they returned to base.
You want to know what I think?
Yes.
I think you're some kind of deviated prevert. I think General Ripper found out about your preversion and that you were organizing some kind of mutiny of preverts.
The bombers were only fitted out with one small urinal. There is no sitting toilet, and crew members must do their business into bags and dispose of their own waste when they land. No exceptions. George never carried a bag off the plane during his entire career.